But it's that kind of split we're dealing with.
James H. Davis, Sr.
That's correct.
And the doctor?
Yeah, I'm Dr. Jano.
This is December 22nd, 1988. My name is Joe Todd, and this is an interview with Dr. James H. Davis, Sr. in Guthrie, Oklahoma. And you live in Guthrie?
No, I live in Langston.
Langston. Okay. So where were you born?
Tulsa, Oklahoma. November the 2nd, 1932.
1932. Who's your father?
Thomas Robert Davis.
And your mother?
Rosa Rogers Davis.
And were your parents from Tulsa?
No, my parents are from Texas.
Texas. When they moved to Oklahoma?
I don't know about my dad, but my mother moved to Oklahoma, a territory, before Oklahoma was a state. I understand that they homesteaded somewhere around Bristol, Oklahoma. And when mother became 16, or between 16 and 17, she was courted by my dad, and subsequently she married him and moved to Tulsa at a very young, tender age, I guess 18. And they stayed there. Started a family, and they subsequently had 10 children between them. I was the 7th.
What kind of work did your father do?
My father worked for the city of Tulsa. Curator or keeper of the Tulsa parks and the zoo. And I assisted him when I was able to help.
What were his duties?
To cut trees and to keep the park clean, to feed the animals, to see that the animals had their regular feeding, their daily feeding.
Animals, just animals in the park, wild animals?
No, the kept animals, tigers, lions.
Oh, this is the zoo?
The zoo.
Oh, okay.
The zoo.
And you say you helped your father?
Oh, yeah.
What did you do?
Whatever you tell me to do, mainly I would try to ease the work on him by doing, clearing out areas, cleaning up the park areas where people would come and picnic and fish and then take a break from fishing and eating. They would eat and I would clean those areas, keep them clean on both sides. On both sides, I mean on the side that was set for specifically the blacks, and then there was a part set aside specifically for the whites.
It was?
Yeah. And so I took care of both of those.
And what years were you working with your father?
That could have been 40 and 41.
Now, Tulsa was segregated, wasn't it? They had the black and white fountains.
That's where they had the big Race Riot. Yes, the only state, I think, in the United States that has ever used a bomb, that had ever been bombed, was Tulsa, Oklahoma, during that Race Riot. But yes, they had the segregated fountains, the black and white fountains in the train station as well as the bus station. And I refused to use the white, the one that were marked white, simply because I didn't agree with that. And I was a kid, 41, in 1941. I was working in that area, shined shoes for some Greeks. That was the best money we could find. It's the only place they would allow me to work. And so I would just, whenever I would go eat, I accepted the fact I had to walk in the back door to eat, and it was fine with me. I ate at Coney Island. It was owned by Greeks. The Greeks had nothing against blacks coming through the front door, but their clientele did, the white clientele did. And they just asked if I would just simply come in, go in the back door. So, because I had walked in the front door intentionally. And so I did. I just started going in the back, or sometimes I would take the liberty of walking through the front just to see what the reaction would be, and would not stop. I would continue into the back. And the fellow who cooked for them was a black fellow who cooked the chili. And he would always say, son, he would always tell me, son, come out of here. You know you just, don't do that. And so I would just say, okay, all right. But at any rate, I learned to cook chili from that old man. And he's gone now, but...
Did you have a separate area that you had to eat in the restaurants?
Yes. Black area, white area. We ate in the kitchen. And normally they had a little table, something that looked like a coffee table. And in some kitchens, there would be a 6-foot table. And it was very neatly kept by black workers. I just accepted that because there was one big thing that I could not handle by myself. And I questioned my mother. And I was sort of taken aback when she said to me, well, son, this is Jim Crow. And this is something that you, as a young fellow, a little fellow, cannot handle. It would take someone much powerful than you, and much more, many more in number. I said, well, Mother, why didn't you do something about it when you were coming up? And I saw tears fill her eyes. And then I never asked any more about it, because she was hurt over that. And I said, I understand. Not you, but your dad or someone. And then we just left it. But yes, that was just a way of life.
What did Jim Crow mean to you when she said that?
Well, it meant to me, Jim is like a crow. I always had my feelings about this. A crow eats everything. It's like a scavenger animal. And it seemed that the whites thought of us as scavengers, and we would take whatever was left. And I did not like the connotation. And so I rebelled.
Who was Jim Crow? Was there a person named Jim Crow?
I don't really know if there was ever a person.
I've never heard of it.
There was one? Who was it? Was he an Indian? Indian black. And they called him Jim Crow. Oh.
We may need that to you about that.
That's right.
I've
I've never heard that. It's not in our Black history books. And I studied Black history.
Did you know your grandparents?
No, I didn't. Yes, I did. I knew my grandparents. I knew my grandmother, granddaddy, who was William Rogers.
Is this your, this is
That's
your
on the maternal side, my mother's dad. I did not know any of my dad's people.
Was your grandfather born in slavery?
No. My granddad, let me say it like this. My granddad, yes, he was born in slavery. I could retract that. He was the son of a slave master. And he was of Irish Indian descent.
Ever heard any stories of the slave days?
No, I didn't hear a slave story.
And you started the school where?
I started school at the Booker T. Washington Elementary School.
And what year? What year did you
I
start?
started school in 41. 40, I started, no, let's retract. I started at 4. In Tulsa, we had to enter a nursery program. And so that would, with me being, I started in 36 at the nursery school, and I stayed in nursery school for 1 year, went to the what we call kindergarten the following year, which was 37. And it was in 37, stayed in there 1 year. And I started previously in a church school. In Tulsa, we did not have many schools to choose from. But although we had a relatively stable population there in North Tulsa. North Tulsa, when you say that, that means where...
The Greenwood area?
Thank you. Greenwood, Archer, Langston, Peoria area. Yeah. And so I started in school there in 36.
Ever hear any stories of that race riot?
Oh yeah. I met her and developed a friendship with a very fine person of Tulsa, from Tulsa, who is now deceased, late. I call him Prof. Jackson. He was actually an undertaker, a mortician, who served during the race riot. And he served to pick up the bodies. And he talked about the multiple graves that were dug and how they stacked people they stacked them on top of each other. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then they go to another group and stack that group. And I never believed that until I heard it from the mortician that that's the way it was going. Tulsa, for some reason, and I don't know how, why, but the other story that impressed me so was the fact that there was such a confrontation. There was a strong confrontation with highly sophisticated weapons on both sides. There was one lone doctor who manned a hill on Detroit in Tulsa with weapons, and not only automatic hand weapons, but he had a machine gun, and he was shooting. Now, when we talk about Detroit, we're talking about from here to the restaurant, to this nursing home. The whites were that close to this man, and he took that on his own. And then we had a doctor. These doctors are rather tough. One doctor was on the corner of Greenwood and Archer, who did all he could. Now, both of these men were subsequently killed, of course. Walter White, I don't know if you've heard of him. Okay. Walter White came in to negotiate a settlement between the whites and the blacks. And you could not tell Walter White from the white man, because he could walk down Main Street in the midst of a war, and the blacks would shoot him if if somebody didn't say it was Walter White, don't shoot him. So at any rate, he did help to quell that riot. I think he was sent in by the NAACP, not the government, the NAACP, although Roosevelt was in, and I guess he was doing just as Lincoln did at the time. You know, as it is recorded in history, Lincoln's words about slavery, abolition, about the movement of the abolitionists, you know, I'm not for it, nor am I against it, you see. Well, I don't know, I saw Roosevelt saying the same thing, because Roosevelt was saying, in fact, I'm not for Jim Crow, but please don't ask me to speak up and say anything about because the people who backed me, I just gained that opinion of, although
What were those mass burials in Tulsa?
they were, according to Mr. Jackson, they were out near the fairground, what is now known as the fairgrounds. They were not in the fairground, but they were away in some area on their way to the fairground. They didn't take them to Mohawk Park. I mention that because some people took refuge at the Mohawk Park. And they held up pretty good for a while. But then troop trucks, I don't know if they had the 45th
I understand it's the National Guard.
National Guard group or not. That's what it was. Who came out and cleaned up, and they huddled everybody together. My mother told me about this because she was a part of it. And my brother, who is now deceased, was the baby. And she had one child. She had two children, the boy and the baby girl. And so she caused him to she held him in his arms, and they had to board the truck and be hauled out to the Tulsa fairground, where they put all of the blacks they could gather up into like a concentration camp. And they were actually locked up as though they were foreign enemies.
Are those graves marked?
Excuse me?
Are those graves marked?
I'm wondering, I don't know if they were ever marked, because Mr. Jackson said that they were instructed to bury the people, and that's all. Just instructed to bury people. They made hasty markings to say at that time, but they don't know. I don't know if they had internments or what. If they unearthed them and then later on took those people and placed them in a proper grave. I don't know that, because Mr. Jackson really he was just simply informing me of what happened and the hot feelings that were going at that time.
I've heard that called a race war.
That's what it was.
Race Riot. It was a race war because they had planned strategy on both sides.
That's
and
a
the riot doesn't have strategy, but the war does.
Well, now that's a proper term used. That's not the first time I've heard it. It was a race war, and it was not a riot. It was a war.
What caused
The black man was accused of raping a white woman. No, he wasn't accused of raping her physically. He was accused of raping her with his eyes. He did not touch her. He raped her, they said, with his eyes. And they killed him. And his friends, and we all knew that something would happen subsequently. That's what, I didn't know it. But they all knew that it would happen eventually. And but I did have the opportunity to feel the tempo of racism in 1941, when another black man was put on trial for raping and killing a white woman. And the famous Amos T. Hall, former Grandmaster of the consistory and the lodge here for the state of Oklahoma, pleaded the man's case. And I was 12 years old, I remember, because I would take my lunch breaks to go listen to this. In the courtroom, stand away from whites. We couldn't even, there was a rope, accordion, that prevented us from coming close to white individuals. Yet I shined their shoes. That's kind of strange to me. I say, you fellas have some strange ideas. And normally I would say that verbally. I would say it so that it could be heard. I would say it so that it could be heard. But at any rate, that man was convicted of raping that woman and killing her. And now, I was 12. I was only 12 when this happened. And this was during the time of World War II. When I came out of the Korean, when I returned from Korea in 52, that man was freed from McAllister because the true culprit was found. And they paid him. They recompensed him with all monies that he would have made.
Was it an all-white jury?
An all-white jury found him guilty, and all-white jury found him not guilty. And an all-white whatever decided to pay him all of that money for having kept him in prison. I went to Korea thinking about how that man suffered for nothing. And because I knew he had not killed him. He pleaded, he let them know. I don't even know where this lady lived. Amos T. Hall with tears. He made one of the greatest presentations I've ever seen before the bar. He cried and he wept. Laid his hands on that man and said, this my friend, George, can you see? He had a house full of children. He wouldn't have to go rape anybody. He's a hard worker. You've heard from his employer. They didn't hear it.
Could blacks be in the jury at that time?
No.
Why?
White Oklahoma. Jim Crow.
Jim Crow?
Yeah. Jim Crow. This is Jim Crow state. This is still a Jim Crow state. We know that. Many of us know to walk softly. Now, I mean, many of us know we're not trying to hurt others. If I get hurt, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I've learned to die for something, and that is for justice. I stand up for justice. I stand up for the rights of people. My people, the Indian people, the Hispanic people, the whites. When I was a boy, we fed poor whites at my home. We didn't have anything but beans. But they would come home. They would be the ones who would help us out at the park. Looked like they were wood people. They lived in the woods or something. And my dad would see them and he'd bring them on home on that old rickety truck, struggling, and then he would come on in and mother would say nothing. He'd say, honey, here are some folk who didn't have anything to eat. Feed them. Beans, cornbread, onions. They would enjoy it. And then they'd go on home.
I was a good man.
Well, praise God. So I didn't grow up with the cancer of hate in me from the racist people I had seen around. I just grew up with a respect for self and a respect for you, for a white man. I had respect for people's rights. I think everybody have rights given by God. And if it were not so, they should not say it, you know. And so when that happened, I just realized that, okay, things can be better. But of course, I had to go through Korea to finally see that this man would be set free. He stayed in jail 10 years.
What was his name?
I don't recall his name anymore. The years I remembered and prayed about him. And I don't recall his name. I reached a point where I just said, Lord, you remember the man.
He's still living.
Excuse me?
He's still living.
The last I heard was when they settled the score with him, he left the state on his own. Yeah, he left the state on his own. with the money he had received, and he took up residence in another state where he could not be even remembered. It was so hard and so cruel what had happened to him. So in Oklahoma, that's the way it was. With the water fountains, I found that white water fountains didn't taste any different from black water fountains. So I did it, and no one ever told me different. I don't know if they thought I couldn't hear or what.
Did you get trouble?
No, I heard a fellow tell me once, an old white man said to me once, "Boy, you're at the wrong fountain." I kept drinking. Maybe he thought I couldn't hear because he said it 2 or 3 times, and I kept drinking. And then when I turned to walk away from that fountain, he said, "Did you hear me?" And I just looked at him and I smiled. And maybe he thought I couldn't hear, nor could I understand. So he said.
And evidently couldn't read.
And evidently couldn't read because I saw, and I was deaf and dumb. See, I was dumb. I couldn't read. And they thought that we were deaf and dumb. It would call us ignorant and that kind of thing. I had a very strange experience later on. I was waiting tables. I was serving a private party in a home in Tulsa, and there was a nigger joke that came up. And the host of the home, a dear friend, a rich man, a very wealthy man, looked at me and said, "Jim," and he beckoned me to his chair. And I went to his chair. He said, "Jim, would you step out for just a moment?" He said, "Don't think about this SOB." And what he said, I stepped out, but I didn't go too far. I wanted to hear what this gentleman had to say. And he said to him, he gave him a lashing with no words reserved, no adjectives reserved. He cursed them up and down. It was his blood relative, too, by the way, from Texas. And then they called me back in, "Jim?" So I went back in. And the old boy he called me and said, I apologize for what I said to you." That's the way it was. Didn't bother me. They were paying me $50 for the hour. I was getting $50, I knew I was going to get $50 for that hour. It didn't bother me.
I've wondered if you possibly heard of why did the Race Riot, Race War get out of hand and get so big so quickly?
I think, as you said, this was a planned confrontation, and everyone who was able to make a contribution, destructive, still a contribution, were allowed and were contacted and were well aware of what was going to happen. And when it happened, you were supposed to be ready to give your life. They had weapons, they had ammunition, they had all their needs right there. And it was bloody, according to the eyewitnesses.
I interviewed one lady in Tulsa, a really white lady.
Okay.
I asked her to recall what she saw when she started crying.
Okay.
And she said she never thought that one man could do that to another man.
See?
Because it was like a game they went to see what was going on.
Okay.
And she said she left very quickly, and when I asked her, she cried, so I didn't pursue it.
Oh, she went to see what was going on?
Because it was the thing to, let's go see the riot.
Oh, it was that kind of thing?
Yeah, so they went to see, but she said we left very quickly because she said, I never thought a man could do that to other men. And she started crying, so I didn't pursue the profession.
Well, it was very much on the, I would think on the level of the Civil War between the states. The war between the states and the race war in Tulsa had a great deal in common. The only difference was you did not have always brothers against brothers. but you definitely had friends fighting against friends. Some who could be friends, who were friends over the phone. We learned to be friends over the phone. That's what they told me. I know the tradition was still going on when I was there. When I returned from Korea. Friends over the phone. And then in 49, before I returned from Korea, in 49, we were asked to integrate Tulsa. And we broke down many barriers. So it seemed. Now I say that was cosmetic. That was just.
Who asked the Tulsa to integrate?
The Tulsa, someone who was responsible for Tulsa public schools.
School administration.
School administration, along with the YMCA and the WCA.
This come from the city of Tulsa?
City of Tulsa. In 49, we held what is now called a sock hop. To us, it was just a social. It was a dance. And it was across from the bus station there on 4th Street, if you know the area. Okay, the old bus station. And we were called there to have a dance. And we went into that's the YWCA though. And we went in there and danced, and I was instructed to find the blondest one I could and start it off because they thought I was rather bold and forward. And I guess I was. But at any rate, I did. I found the blondest one I could find, girl I could find, and I broke the ice. The others followed. A friend of mine named Lonnie Thomas, he was killed, I think, or I'm not sure. I think Vietnam took its toll on him. But at any rate, Lonnie followed me. And the girls we danced with, they kept coming back to us. And at the end of that dance, we were instructed by our advisor to escort those girls home if they so desired. And the dance was over. This is 49 in Tulsa. The dance was over around 9:30 or 10 o'clock. And we escorted girls home, white girls home, to the south side of Tulsa, on the bus, at the front, before Rosa Parks ever rode on a bus. That's in the history of Tulsa.
Why did the city fathers decide to integrate Tulsa? What caused them to do it?
They did not want the racist tempo to build. They didn't want it to build again to the level of another race war. Yes, they did not want that to happen again. I think they seriously thought it would develop too, at one point. It was bad at one point. And we were at 49, so they had just gone through that race riot, and things were settling out. Things settled out. Okay, here I am at 49. They're setting down certain patterns to prevent. Before they were setting other patterns to conquer. They were going to run the blacks out of Tulsa. That's what they were going to do. Tulsa was known at one time as Greenwood was known at one time as the Black Wall Street. Did you?
Well, we're talking about here.
Oh,
I
okay.
was asking about Black Wall Street.
Okay. Greenwood was known at one time as the Black Wall Street. Why was it known as Black Wall Street? Because of the multiple businesses that were located on Greenwood. Greenwood, it was a black man named Simon Berry who had the first transit service in the city of Tulsa. And he sold his business to a white man. Now, but regardless of that, He could have sold his business to some of those wealthy fellas on the Black Wall Street. I mean, we actually had money flowing through there. Every car you would find at an exclusive white area downtown, you would find that same car owned by some black in North Tulsa at this time. There were insurance companies. There is still the Oklahoma Eagle. We had medical service. We had top flight druggists. We had billet parlors that were number one. Some of the best hustlers in the country would come through there. We had many of the things that are normally seen in an affluent society flowing through North Greenwood. Now, I think that could have been one of the reasons. See, there were hotels owned by blacks and large. I mean, like we had one hotel that I remember, five-story hotel. We had nightclubs where top billings. You would have Ernie Field from Tulsa. You would have Roy Milton. You would have Cap Calloway coming through, Nat King Cole, James Edward, the movie star, would make special appearances in there. I shined shoes in one place called the Flamingo, where I'd make $5 every time I would shine shoes, and then every time they'd have a selling contest, I would sing. On Mondays, that's the time to make money. So I'd go in and I'd sing and win the contest, and make $5. And I subsequently had to tell my mother. Of course, she put a stop to that. She heard I was singing in nightclubs, but at any rate, it was fun. So, but that's a fact. Every black who came this way knew about the Black Wall Street. Well, I say like this. Now, I spoke about the hustlers coming to the billet parlors, but that's a part of a society. You're going to have these elements. You're going to have that crime element in order for it to be a solid community.
What happened to Black Wall Street?
Black Wall Street crumbled pretty much when White Wall Street decided to infiltrate. There was a 20-year plan for the development of Greenwood. I saw it in '54. And it was in the office of the Urban League. And what was planned was what is now going on in North Tulsa. And it was meticulously broken down and placed in the hands of white men. Who owns Black Wall Street now? White men. Why? Because they had made things so difficult for the landowners that they could no longer compete. The dollar still speaks loud. Promises can be said. Handshakes are still good, but that dollar speaks louder. And so Black Wall Street was bought out of black hands, and now it's in the hands of, it's owned by whites, although my sister has a business there on Black Wall Street now. But a dear friend of mine, a medical man, a doctor, has a very good practice there. Dr. Gary Davis.
So Black Wall Street is on Greenwood Street?
Oh yeah. Black Wall Street was Greenwood. That was where Archer, it was right off Archer, or in the Archer area. We had movie houses, the Dreamland and one other one on Cameron, and then we had the mortuary. There were two mortuaries. Of course, you had a lot of shooting going on because of all that. Those people. But at any rate, that's what happened to Black Wall Street. It's self-destruct. You see, it was a good thing going, but it's self-destructive. And that's what happens with things that are good. We have to tear down our own families. We have to tear down our own state. We within, those of us within, not the people coming from the outside. It's from within. We destroy, we self-destroy. I can self-destroy me, but I don't necessarily have to do it. It's what goeth in that defileth the body. Yeah. So that's what happened to Black Wall Street.
You went through high school
Yes, I did.
at what school?
At Washington, Booker T. Washington.
Now, the high schools were segregated in Tulsa,
Yes.
and Washington was the black school.
At the time I went through, that was the only black school.
And you graduated what year?
I graduated from Washington in '54 because of the interruption of the Korean War. I volunteered, as I said earlier, I volunteered in 1950 to go to the Air Force, and they told me they did not need any Negroes in the space for us. So at any rate, I went home and I waited. I said, well, I know I passed that little lousy test. I don't know why, but at any rate, subsequently the Army sent me a letter. And their statement was, we understand that you missed the Air Force test by 1 point, but we would be more than happy to receive you into the Army. By 1 point? You've got to be kidding. I said, well, at any rate. So I went into the Army. I didn't care. I just went into the Army. My dad had died at 47, in 1947, and I wanted to do something constructive. I needed disciplining. And that was my way of doing it. And I wanted to see the country. I made my mind up in 1941, December 7th, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, as my mother stood on the porch on that hillside at Frankfurt, 901 North Frankfurt, where I was also born, right there at that house, by some midwife. My mother stood on the porch. At that evening here in Oklahoma, we had a heavy fog. And a white man came out of that fog, out of the hills, howling off the hill. That's called a standpipe hill. And they were called, and he was extra, read all about it. Japan bombs Pearl Harbor. Well, he got louder and louder, and my mother went out to sea, and I went along with her. And I held her around the waist, around her legs, and so she was crying, and that's why I held her. And Daddy wasn't there, I don't know where he was, but at any rate, I said, Mother, don't cry. But then we could get a paper for a nickel, and we asked the guy for a paper. Of course, he wanted to sell the paper, so you didn't have to worry. Yeah, you want a paper? Yes. Mother bought a paper, and we read the paper, the little tablet. It was like a little old bit of something. It wasn't really fancy. But at any rate, I said, Mother, I want to see combat. I just don't believe this, Mother. Don't you worry about it. Don't worry about it, Mother, please. And because I was trying to calm Mother down, the other children were inside. They didn't want to be bothered. They were afraid of coming outdoors, I guess. I don't know what it was. But at any rate, I decided that's what I wanted to do. And I had my chance in 1951, I went to combat in Korea.
Let me, before we get to there, in school, did you have any organized work for the war effort in World War II?
In World War II, there was organized work effort. We had people in our community who served in the CCC, and the WPA, that type of thing was still going. They had people who were working. To me, they were like excuse me, it was like a sophisticated slave labor. Now, I don't know if that's proper or not. But the young man I talked with in my community, I questioned him. I was much younger, but I wanted to know what was he doing. I said, were you fighting, or why are you wearing a uniform? I said, are you in the Army? He said, I'm not really in the Army. I said, well, what are you doing? He said, well, I go out and cut trees. I said, cut trees? Where? He said, in Oklahoma, in Arkansas, in Texas. I build buildings. I help to build buildings. I said, oh, do they pay you a lot for that? He said, no. He told me, whatever he told me, that's why whatever he told me gave me the impression that he was doing slave work. Because it seemed like he would go out like I saw on the cotton field. You know, work all day and get barely nothing, you know, for pulling in 100 pounds of cotton. You know, I didn't pull it in because I didn't believe in it. I pulled in 50 though. I still didn't get one, of course. But
Where'd you pick cotton?
where?
Where?
I picked cotton out from Haskell, Oklahoma. Somewhere between Haskell and where the Oral Roberts University is located now. Between some area in there. I don't even remember because I didn't want to do it, but I wanted to see a football game in Muskogee, and my mother told me if I went out and picked cotton, I could do it and make some money. Did you say, why did I pick cotton?
That's my next question, but you answered.
Oh, okay. The reason I did it was to make some money. And at that time, I was a little older. I was in high school. I was, I think, a sophomore, and I wanted to make some money. But I was not cut out for picking cotton. And so the guy was very nice with me, quite different from the one I had seen earlier when I was 6 years old, 7, on a cotton field, the one who started to kill my brother just for singing. This guy was nice. He said, come over here, son. He said, sit over here with me. Come over here, sit next to the truck. Get out of the sun. And I said, okay. He said, you don't like to pick cotton, do you? I said, no, I don't. He said, I didn't think you did. Just sit here and wait, and then when we get ready, we'll all go back home, okay? I said, that's fine with me. So that's what that was. Yeah. I had a very bad experience before on the cotton field. That was another reason I didn't like the thought of it. The guy actually wanted to shoot my brother. He took his handgun to go out to shoot him. And I screamed, and that stopped it. Now that was near your town, Boston. That was about your town. I don't know the guy's name, and if I did, I wouldn't want to call it.
In the class in your school,
Excuse me?
in school in World War II, the class you were in, did you participate in the war effort?
Oh, in the war effort, did I participate in it? No, I didn't. I was too young to do too much at that time. In World War II. Yeah, World War II. I was just, we didn't do things, you mean like...
They had the rubber drives, metal drives.
Oh yeah, I did that. I did the metal deal. I did the metal. I did. Picked up metal. You know, we took metal in. Picked it up anywhere. I've forgotten all about that. I don't know how you remember. You're younger than I am. Much younger, I think. But yeah, I did. I participated in the metal. I bought bonds. I bought war bonds. I participated. And I would buy war bonds with the money I would get from my medals that I would sell. It was a game. It became a competition for those of us who were involved in it because we wanted to see who could win the most bonds, you know. And so, coming from a large family, we wanted to get as many bonds as we could, you know. We did, and so it became a family deal. So we had a great time helping. We thought we were helping. There was something else that we did. Not only bond. Was there something with the rags? Cloth thing? It was, yeah, they had something like that. I know it was something else. And I remember that. The string. I had never thought about that, too. Right. I've seen all of it.
Where do you take basic?
I did my basic at Fort Riley, Kansas, Camp Funston, and also Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
Describe Fort Riley, the training you had at Fort Riley.
I was under great duress at Fort Riley, to put it mildly. Fort Riley was an experience for me. It seemed that although I was the selected person to carry the package for the troops going in, for the new recruits, I was the one who had on the tie and the suit. And I had the special bunk area going on the troop train going to Fort Riley from Oklahoma City. But when I got there, I could call some names. I know the sergeant's name, and that guy I never will forget. I forget. But right off, I remember him. And he looked at me and said, "Who in the so-and-so you think you are?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Is that the way to dress a superior officer soldier?" I didn't know what to say. I didn't know any language that he was talking about. But at any rate, I gave him that envelope and I just didn't say any more. And I could do everything that they wanted of me until they wanted to, in that particular situation. I said that particular situation because I went to another training site. I left that sergeant and I jumped it's like jumping from the fire, from the grease skillet into the fire into the skillet, or skillet to the fire, whatever it is. I did that because I went to the other one, and that's when I received racist attitudes. My training took me into the hospital, and I don't know what they found in the hospital, but they kept me in there. Anyway, they kept me in there long enough to keep me out of the heat. I was having a problem with the heat. And so I was taking all these heat tablets, they call them salt pills. And I left Camp Funston for Forsyth. And I was there, and it was at Forsyth where I ran into my heaviest assault of racism. And when that happened, I sought out a black colonel who was the chaplain for Fort Riley, for the entire post. And so for the fort. And so I sought out that colonel and I told him about the problems I was having over there. And he asked me, he said, "Son, come over and visit with me on Thanksgiving." This was Thanksgiving of '50. And he said, "And tell me about your situation." And I did. I sang for him, first of all, for the chapel. And he was very impressed, and then he invited me to his home for dinner. And I had been, and he asked me what did I want to do, and I told him. And a week later, I was in Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
What happened? If you want to talk about it.
I'll talk about it. At Fort Riley, after I left that first outfit, I don't know if they liked the fact I was in the hospital or not, but be that as it may, I was placed in this totally white outfit. There was one other person close to me in complexion, and he was a fully born Indian, Mexican. His name was Romero or something. But Romero slept at the top bunk, and I slept in the bottom bunk. And when we would go to sleep from the first night, I moved into that outfit. The first night, they would throw those nasty butt cans, we call them butt cans, cans with a little water. They were like Folgers coffee cans, pounds of coffee, and they had a little water in them, and they would be held up. They would be placed on a beam in the barracks by a nail, and you could take them off, of course, to empty them. And they would throw the butt cans. I mean, we received 2 or 3. The kid up above me, the young guy above me. So when that happened, I just decided to get into it. And I said, well, we cannot just wait until the morning to tell anybody. And so we just grabbed the butt can, we got water, and we were young, we didn't care. If we got hurt, it's too bad. So we just threw butt cans all night until some sergeant came in, and he just we wanted to know what was going on. And he wouldn't, and I started to tell him. And he told me to shut up. I didn't ask you anything, boy. He didn't say soldier, he said, I didn't ask you anything, boy. And the guy above me started to explain to him. He said, I don't think I called your name. He said, you spoke, but you don't say a thing. What happened? And he was asking, now this is in a barracks. And all the other guys were white. And that's where he got his answer. Well, they tried to start some trouble. They started throwing this, that, and butt can. So they put us on KP for the next day. On the next 3 days. They had special duties and kitchen police duty. And I said, but we did not. He said, I didn't ask you anything, boy. That's the way it was. So I took those 3 days, and that was approaching the Thanksgiving holiday anyway. I hadn't been in there for about 3 weeks, and so I saw either I'd have to get out of there. They were going to destroy me, or I was going to destroy somebody. And that wasn't really my intent for going in the Army. My intent for going in the Army was to send money home to my mother through a class Q allotment, as well as receive some discipline, and then at the same time gain education. So at any rate, I went in to see the CO, and the CO, the sergeant in charge, saw me step through the door and said, nigger, who told you to come in here? Sergeant. And I said, Recruit Davis requests to see the commanding officer. I tried to overlook what he was saying. I just said, Recruit Davis requests to see the commanding officer. He said, nigga, I asked you who told you to come in here. When he said it the second time, I went on in to see the captain. I didn't get too much relief in there. I didn't get any relief in there. When I walked past him in to see the captain, and I snapped to attention and saluted him and said, Recruit Davis requests to see the commanding officer. Said, boy, who told you to come through that door? He said, boy. The sergeant said, nigger. The sergeant in charge of the barracks said, boy. They always referred to me that way. And when he said what he said, and told me then, he said, get out of here. And until you call for, don't you darken my door. So I didn't say nothing other than saluted. I started to walk out, and he said, come back in here, boy. Do you know how to leave a commanding officer's room? And I saluted him in the military about face and went out. We were getting ready to go on the rifle range, and they gave me an automatic weapon. So we were learning to shoot. And so I took it was called a grease gun. As you know, a grease gun has a load in it, something. It has a clip in it about that long. And whatever way you hold it, that's the way it shoots. If you hold it straight down, it shoots up. If you hold it this way, it shoots that way. If you hold it over here to the right, to the left, it shoots back to the right. So now they forgot that in the other outfit, I'd already qualified as a marksman. So I took that grease gun, knowing how they feel about me. I was afraid to eat. You understand what I'm saying? I was only 17 years old. I was just coming up to, I had just made my 18th birthday. Just made it. And so I just, when they said, ready on the firing line, before they said, commence firing, I was already shooting. And I was pretending that I was going to come that way. I turned it so that the clip would be level, and I was shooting trees down. First, and then go across like that. And then they thought I had my finger on the trigger and couldn't turn it loose. But those guys who were near me were the ones who were down there shooting. They were the ones who were frightened. The ones who were near me, they didn't really get too frightened. I don't know if they were frightened or not, because everybody said, it's Davis. It's Davis. They knew my name then. They knew my name. They said, soldier, soldier. And I just kept shooting. And one guy came up to me with a smile and he said, soldier, it's all right. It's all right. Cease firing, to everybody. I stopped firing. That was the last time they took me out on the firing ring, the last time they treated me bad. As a matter of fact, it was, like I said, it was a short time after that I had asked for a transfer through the colonel, and I was hastily removed to Fort Sill. No one ever said anything else to me about it. I was entered into the officer cadet school in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and was doing well until they called me to Korea. I didn't even know Korea was going. I didn't even know the war was going.
When were you in basic? What year?
In 1950.
And
I left in April of 51. I was in Korea.
No, when did you complete officer?
I didn't finish it. They pulled me out of Officer Cadet School to send me to Korea.
What rank were you then?
I was just whatever they call a special officers, But they don't place that down. I left you some material here that you will see that they don't even show that I was in combat. They show that I was in the 645th Engineer Battalion, Combat Engineer Battalion. They do not show that I served in the 58th Armored Field Artillery Battalion. That's on my DD 214 form, that discharge form. They, meaning the military, does not show that I served as a combat soldier, and yet they show where I have a bronze medal. and combat medals. They show it on my DD 214 form. They show me as being, my MOS as being a field clerk. You know what a field clerk is? According to Army term, a field clerk is military, so just a infantryman. That's what they show.
What rank did you have? You said
When I left Officer Cadet School in Fort Sill, I was just a special officer because we had not made the rank. We were in study.
So you were between enlisted and officer rank, you were just more or less?
Yeah, I was in between an enlisted person, like I would say a sergeant, or some kind of officer of the enlisted rank, and the officer's rank. But they just called us special officers. We had special privileges. We wore special little badges up on our shoulders, It was gone that fast, though, because they pulled us into Korea. And in Korea, we went in as just regular soldiers. They were beefing up the troops. And they don't even show it on my discharge paper that I ever served in 3 outfits. I served in four, really. The 645th Combat Engineer Battalion, the 58th Armored Field Artillery Battalion out of Fort Hood, Texas. And then, well, it was three, and one was a 155 Artillery Battalion. But I served the chief of section. I made chief of section with around the artillery, but I also served as a reconnaissance sergeant. No credit. Nothing is on my discharge paper to show that. And yet they said that my combat papers during the time that one of the times I was requesting some assistance, I had Senator Fred Harris, then Senator Fred Harris, and my family physician who knew about my illness at home, Dr. Perry, and to write letters to the effect that I was indeed in the military. And so at any rate, they did not show any of that on the DD 214 form.
Any idea?
I don't have any idea.
When did you go to Korea? What was the date?
Excuse me?
What was the date?
Oh, I went to Korea April of '51.
And how did you travel to Korea?
Well, I went from here to Camp Stoneman, California, to the port of deportation, and from there to the port of deportation, and we went by ship to Japan, and from Japan by bus up to Yeongdong-po, and by ship we ended up by a bus rather, up into the northern part of Japan, and then we went over into Korea, and landed in Busan. From Yeongdong-po, took a strange boat, and there we rode a troop train from Yeongdong-po or Busan on into Seoul, Korea. And there we had bunks that were stacked, 4. We could not do anything but lay down, really. But we did not have the wire mesh. You know, we did have covering. It was a train. I guess it was a train. I don't know what it was really. But it was something that hauled people, a lot of them. And we just had to lay down. Couldn't get up until we got to where we were going. You know, unless we wanted to get up and walk through an aisle and come back and get in the bunk bed.
Was this before the Chinese invasion?
I was there at the spring offensives of 51.
Yeah, when the Chinese invaded.
Spring of 50. Now I'm thinking this is spring offenses of 51. Would that be the Chinese invasion?
I don't know. I wasn't in at that time.
Okay. If it was during that time, I was in on a spring offenses, what they call offenses. That's just simply an attack. And our job was to fall back, to retreat, and set up a little quadrant, an area for them to drop into, and then we were to encircle them. And I was part of that. I don't know if it was Chinese invasion or not.
So were you fighting Chinese troops or Korean troops?
We were fighting Chinese and Korean.
Okay, that would be after the Chinese invasion.
It was after.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're working your way back north then?
We were working our way into the north. I'm coming out of the south, from Seoul. And so we were working our way north. We were going on into Incheon. We would have gone on into China had the stops not been put on.
What were your duties in Korea?
I was, number one, I served as I did serve for a few days in the 645th Combat Engineer, but all I didn't do hardly anything then but do watch service. I worked on outpost duties. That's all I did. I worked with a Korean who could not speak English. And I was a young English boy who could not speak English, could speak Korean. So there we were together out there at midnight, overnight, you know. But we did understand each other. The one wasn't supposed to say anything. And don't make any strange moves, anything of that sort. We agreed to that. So we stayed out there and we were okay. We were manning a 50 caliber machine gun outpost. And we were about 1,000 yards away from the main area. And then I left that outfit. Well, I was assigned to forward observer from there. They knew that I was artillery orientated, and they sent me to do the sergeant, to be the reconnaissance sergeant, and to replace a 6 feet 4 inch, 230 pound former sergeant, a reconnaissance sergeant, who had been killed by the Koreans or the Chinese, someone, and his body parts had been sent back. And there was a little fellow, a black sergeant, who was in charge, and he had it in for me because I had told him to leave my tent that morning because he wanted me to come and do some work, and I just came in off outpost duty, overnight outpost duty, and then he wanted me to do a window arrest. And I told him to please leave me alone. And he wouldn't, so I said something that he didn't like, and I made a move toward him. He didn't like that. And so he said, all right, Moon, that's okay, that's okay. And next thing I knew, he came back that afternoon. He was sending me up to the front line. As a matter of fact, not only did he send me up to the front line, I led the troops through the minefield. I was walking as though I knew where I was going. All they said to me was that frightened lieutenant told me to lead out. He said, now where we're going, Davis, is that spot right over there. He showed me a point way ahead. He said, now, you lead us. I thought that was very honoring.
Did you know you were going through a minefield?
No, not then. I knew that he said that there were some mines, some land mines. And so I assumed that there were a few. But when we reached our destination, I found that we were in a land mine field. You understand? Either way, we could have stepped off, and either way, I could have just stepped the wrong way. I didn't know where I was just being led by the Lord. You know?
What was your reaction to that?
After that, I was very down on them, on the Army, on that lieutenant especially. They offered me, after I came out of that experience as recon sergeant, they offered me a second lieutenant combat commission. And I wouldn't accept it because I was so down with them for putting me through that. And so at any rate, after that though, I served as chief of section, artillery, for the artillery, served as chief of section. When I came back to the States, I taught school in Camp McCoy, Wisconsin. I taught chemical biology. I taught mine warfare. I attended a school, chemical biological warfare, chemical, biological, and radiological warfare school. I taught the mine warfare after I had completed mine warfare schooling at Fort Knox, Kentucky. I was only 19 years old, teaching school, straight out of combat. But they did not want to show on my DD 214 form that I had even been in combat. And then finally, after I left that point, I was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. At Fort Campbell, Kentucky, I was attached to a military. I was on military service there. And I served in a military outfit as keeper of finances. And then I headed research, what they call research. It was simply research and return of AWOL soldiers. So actually, when I finished with the Army, I was a military attaché. And that's when I went back to school to finish that 1 year. I had 1 year remaining before my degree. And I went back to school and received all kinds of accolades for coming back and all this kind of stuff. They made me an officer. I don't know, I think that was the greatest time for me. It was sort of a boost. Although I never did get any satisfaction from the Army for the partial loss of hearing during combat exercises in Korea. And like I said, they don't show it on that DD 214 form.
What's your fondest memory of Korea?
Leaving. And not to sound crass, but that's not a joke. It's a fact. My fondest memory of Korea was leaving. I never understood why we were there. I saw nothing for which we were fighting. My worst memory was being falsely accused of having killed or having murdered an old Korean woman and being cleared by a New Zealander who, to my surprise, was my complexion and had hair just like mine. At that time I did have some. And after general court-martial, we had been held over. Another soldier friend of mine, we were the ones who were accused of this. And they call it what it was after the communists, because this was called the Tet offenses. During the Tet offenses, and what it meant, I don't know, the Army had many terms that I didn't get. But we were to clear out villages, and that's what we were doing. We were helping people to move so that they would not be bombed. And we were allowing the Chinese to think that we were giving up. And so we dropped back and allowed them to do that, and we actually had them covered. They ended up in something like a horseshoe, because we were to clear all of this area, and we would take both sides and in front. And that's what we did. But at any rate, during that period of time, a Korean woman was shot by someone who was up in the mountain, and all they could think of was Chocolatero soldier. And I found out, unfortunately, later, after I went back to my outfit, I came back from rest and recuperation from Osaka, Japan, that my name was called for returning to the state, to be returned to the state. As I got off the plane from Japan, my name was called. And I said, wait, James H. Davis, R831358, 1831358, yes. I said, well, that's me. Well, Mr. Davis, you'll have to talk with your commanding officer. Your name has been scratched. I didn't know why. And that's when I found out. that was the situation. And so they kept us over there 3 months longer to clear it up. And a New Zealander came in, by God's grace, at the last minute. We were out, believe me, for recess before judgment. And there was a Jeep coming down this long dusty road, this long dirt road, and churning up great clouds of dust. And it drove right up to the tent. And an officer, we could see some kind of bars on his shoulder, and a soldier and a regular army enlisted man from New Zealand got out. And both of them went past the very guards that we were told we could not. This other black fellow and me were told we could not go by. Go by them. We could don't go by these people. If you do, we'll put you in the stockade. That's no problem. No problem. I'm not going to stockade. Do you know he went in there and a confession was made by that young fellow of shooting that woman, that New Zealander, shot from up in the mountains and killed that old woman. They let him leave with his officer. The case was dropped. Do you hear me? Dropped. That's why I don't have any fond. The only fond memory I have of Korea is leaving.
Why did they drop charges against him?
Because they thought they had an American and they could show in good faith that they meant to do right. Here, we found the ones who did this. They were American because they had said Chocolatito soldier. The Americana Chocolatito soldier. But when the New Zealanders popped up, then all of a sudden the United Nations stood up. It seemed, in a matter of moments. All charges, all rancor, all dismay subsided, went under, and everybody's free. We were free. We went home. So we were able to just leave it and come home and take one out. But it didn't.
Has anybody ever classified you as being radical? And if they have, do you think that this might have changed from things that you've seen, heard through the years, and you have these feelings deep inside?
I have some deep feelings about it. I've been classified as a very, not radical, but active. I'm an activist. They call me an activist. I marched around Safeway in the 60s. I led a march around Safeway because of some racist practice. And I would do it now for the same reason. Because I said earlier, I have respect for human rights. And I think, maybe I'm very verbal and vocal. I am that. But I have not been hurt. I have not been seriously hurt. My greatest moment was coming out of Korea and leaving Japan also. But I always said I would like to return, just to see what it's like now, and especially after seeing the 1988 Olympics. I would like to be able to share that with my wife and whatever children who would want to go. It would be fine, but I would like to share that with my wife because I think it could be civilized. Now, I saw some civilized practices, and then I've seen some barbaric practices also. Some of those little kids, possibly some of the people who are in power, receive food from me through the fence that they would have around the compounds. I would come out and give my food to them. People who stand for right are normally considered activists. Jesus was an activist. And see, I'm a preacher. I'm a pastor. I'm an activist. I speak up for the right that is in me according to good Christian principles. Now you will find that when I speak out, I'm not speaking out for evil. I'm not speaking out for your destruction. I'm speaking out for your life. I want you to live. I want you to enjoy life, but I want you to allow me to live and to enjoy life and to pursue happiness. I will not bother you in your pursuit. Neither do I expect you to bother me. I think that's fair. Same way with Doris has as much right. Right? I mean, I don't believe in bothering her. I don't want her to bother, to prevent me. When I say bother, I'm talking about prevent. You know, that's the way I am, and may be called, I may be considered a radical to some. But in most quarters, I'm considered an activist for the right. Martin Luther King was considered an activist. At first, they called him a radical until they understood what he was saying. Same thing about Jesse Jackson. But the main thing is that Jesse, as Jesse is, and that is, Martin was an activist for the rights of people. Jesse was an activist for the rights of people. Jim Davis is an activist for the rights of people in the very style that Jesus was, an activist for the rights of people. Cannot overlook that. It's a very necessary thing for us to look upon one another as God's creation and not usurp authority one from the other. Walking around with the beams or the beams in our eyes and looking at splinters in a brother's eyes or specks. I don't agree with that. So I speak up for those things because I was totally dissatisfied with the United States government, who the government representatives there in Korea, holding us responsible. You know what they told me I was? An eyewitness. They did not tell me that I was being accused of the crime until that day when that New Zealander told the story. And then they revealed to me, said, Mr. Davis, you both were considered suspects.
Did you return to school after 4 years?
Oh yes.
Where'd you go?
Booker T. Washington. Went back to my home school, finished, and received several scholarships. I took a scholarship to Lincoln University. I came to Langston. I went to Langston for a semester. I had the same experience at Langston, that's something similar, rather, to what Dr. Cook had. I just could not hang with Langston. It wasn't the right place. Matter of fact, at Langston they called me a communist. And you know why? Because I wore a tie, a shirt and a tie. A tie with a shirt every day. You know, I was dressed, I had pants. But I mean, the fact that I had how in the world can you determine a person to be a tie? I said, this is the only black school in the state of Oklahoma, and do you think I would actually be out here trying to disrupt this program?
So where'd you go after Langston?
I went to Lincoln University, Jefferson City, Missouri. I went back to Tulsa, really, and was picked up by a millionaire who saw me work. And I was a waiter. I served as a waiter at the Millionaire Club in Tulsa. And I received my full education, total education, by the grace of God through that man.
What's his name?
I couldn't reveal that because I think it would be breaking that trust. But at any rate, he never hesitated. See, and that's what let me know that there were some white people, I don't really like the name white Caucasian, who are genuine. They're real. People are people, okay? Sometimes they come in different colors, but you'll find people doing people things in whatever ethnicity you find yourself. This man saw a need. He saw this little black fellow who needed an education. So he said to me, Jim, do you intend to wait tables all of your life, or do you intend to go back to school? I said, sir, I'm trying my best to gain enough money to go back to school. And he said, you bring me in what you need to go back to school. Bring me all of your bills, and what will it take for you to go back to school, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I did that. I listed everything he wanted from me. And when he saw it, he called me at my home and had me to come there and presented me with a check for X number of dollars, far beyond $1,000. And he said, this will take care of all of your bills. This will also enable you to buy you some clothes, some school clothes, and your wife some clothes, and your child. And you will have ample luggage, and you are to go to that area, to that town. Seek a home, find a home, furnish it. Put the furniture in it that you want. Call me and let me know what it is. If I'm not here, my secretary will be here, and she will send a check for it. I did that. Found a home, furnished it, and he paid for all of it. I finished that school in 3.5 years.
At Lincoln?
At Lincoln. I had a baccalaureate degree in vocal pedagogy and the performing arts, a bachelor of music degree. Excuse me. And then I was privileged to be considered for a scholarship at Michigan State University. I was to repeat the repertoire of Roland Hayes. And so I called and told my benefactor what was going on. He said, take it. And I said, okay. I contacted the people and told them I would be there. It was during the Christmas holidays that I had an interview scheduled. And he sent me money for that trip because he wanted me to look a certain way. He wanted me to look right. And he sent me up there in style. I wore, when I say, I'll just say this to give you an idea of what I mean. I wore spats with matching leather gloves and Dobbs hat. That's the kind of style. With a felt collar, herringbone top coat. Now you know I must have had something under that, right? That would match what I had on. And I went in there, and when they saw me and heard me, I was the person. And so I stayed there for a year, and I had through some means, 2 ulcers. I had to drop out of school. But I also had to go into the ministry. And so when my graduate advisor called me in and told me what was going on with everything, and said, Jim, I just seem to notice that you have something else on your mind. You want to do something else. Excuse me, I was serving as a lecturer up there. I was meeting international bodies and talking with them about the black ethnic experience in America. And I would compose songs on the spots, right on the spot. And at any rate, I accepted the professor's advice, and I enrolled in a Bible college in Detroit. Did some work there, and then in Detroit, I was picked up by the convention, the black convention, one of the black conventions, National Baptist Convention, USA Corporate, and sent to Howard University, Washington, D.C. And I stayed up there until my wife had a baby, and she had a child, it was early, and so I had to come back home. But I was unable to get back. But my education has continued. I went on and finished a master's degree at the University of Oklahoma, and I finished a ministry degree at Central America in Kansas City. Matter of fact, I serve now that Bible college. I have a college at my church now. I established one in Wichita, Kansas.
What church do you have?
I pastored the Mount Bethel Baptist Church in Langston, Oklahoma. I did pastor the New Hope Baptist Church in Wichita, Kansas. And at Wichita, we established the Southwestern Bible College under the auspices of University of Central America, which I serve as an executive vice chancellor now.
When did you get your doctorate?
In ministry.
When?
Oh, when?
Yes.
In 81.
Did you take part in the sit-ins in Oklahoma City in the 60s?
No, I did at Jeff City in the 60s. It was in 61, spring of 61, right before I graduated. I graduated August of 61. And Jefferson City had not been integrated. Matter of fact, I had waited tables at that exclusive place, a place where you can get prime ribs, good food, and New York strips, filet mignon, etc., everything, lobster tails. And I did French service and all of that. So they asked that I would serve on that committee for integration? And I said, yes, I'll be happy to. I did it, but I did it without rancor. I did not do it with rancor. I did not do it with anger. I just simply moved so that the wife and I could serve as a catalyst for others to come. And that's why I would term it more of an activist, more than radical. I didn't do just real weird things. I actually used education as my guide, but I was actively involved with that. And so we integrated. One of the top eating places in Jefferson City, Missouri, same as I did in Tulsa.
What was the name of it?
It was a restaurant. I don't recall. It was I don't recall. It was something like this place on the highway, on I-35 down here. One of these top, something like Greystone, of that caliber. And they let us in. Matter of fact, I called the waitress who served me was the one who normally worked with me, because I normally I gave instructions on how to wait tables. But I also continued that in 61 when I got to 61 and 62 when I arrived in East Lansing, Michigan. In Lansing, Michigan, because Lansing is the capital of Michigan. And I served George Montgomery, the Ford family, Norman Vincent Peale, these people I served. And I speak of it with joy. It didn't bother me one bit. I didn't mind that. That was an honest living. And I was taking care of an honest family. I had a large family, 5 children at that time. But I'm a father of 8, But I had 5 there to take care of. So, but at any rate, everything just went fine from then on. I mean, I didn't have serious. I did get well subsequently. I was hospitalized at the Dearborn Hospital. And they said Dearborn was very racist at the time, but I didn't feel any racism. And I guess I overcame that part. But now, you know what, a strange thing happened when I came back from Korea, here to Oklahoma, in Tulsa. I went downtown to pick up a paper, a morning paper. Two white guys, different cars. One had an Alabama tag and one had a Mississippi tag on it. Sandwiched me in. I had no idea they were together. None whatsoever. And one came in front of me, sped up and cut in front of me at the light. And the other one stopped behind me and got out of their cars with the intent of doing damage to me. And the police drove by and saw this because the station was right near where we were and nothing was done. But I was able to cut that out. I was able to stop that I had to pull, a weapon. But they didn't. They went on. I didn't shoot anybody, but I thought, how crass. Why would they jump me? They didn't even know me, Yeah. Oh yeah. I wouldn't tell you to turn it out. I was saying something else.
I'm sorry.
It sounded like it, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, that's okay. Yeah, you can turn it back. But they let me alone, and I went on, but I had to place a threat on them. That was it. Wasn't it?
It's 20 minutes to 2. Yeah. Okay, you have any questions?
Dr. Davis, all in all that you've been through your life, what do you feel with the young people today, and what you would strive to tell them that everything that you've been through, your strengths, the encouragement, would you say today for our young people?
I would say to the young people of today to weigh all situations for their basic value. What is going on? I think young people today fail to show, in so many instances, fail to show patience. They fail to really listen to what is being said. They fail in many instances to be the best they can be. I found that being the best, giving the best that was in Jim Davis was the thing that helped me the most. If I had a test, then it was up to me, not the teacher, to do the studying. It was up to me to redo my notes. And if I failed to do my homework, then I may miss out. And I think that's what young people have to realize. Young people must realize that there is a job to do. But before anyone can do a job, they have to be prepared to do the job. I think that's what Job Corps is all about, preparing people to do certain work. And if they fail to do it, everyone out there could not be just going off on the deep end, because you have a lot of graduates coming out of Job Corps, and they're doing some great work. Yes, some. We have some out in. I presently serve as a trustee for the city of Langston. I've been elected also. I was elected to that position. I was also elected to the school board in the city of Langston. So being an activist does not hurt me when I'm championing the cause of right. But if you champion the cause of evil, I don't think you should have a voice in society. Is that what you were? Does that answer your question, Drew?
Dr. Davis, I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.